Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome back to my video. First of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Azzhara Nabila. I'm from 5BB class. So now I want to explain about probability samples versus non-probability samples. Okay, let's go to the topic. What is probability samples? Probability samples is a sample drawn in a way to give every member of the population a known non-zero chance of inclusion. Probability samples are usually more representative than non-probability samples of the population from which they are drawn. So here is the probability samples. A is simple random sampling. Simple random sampling is stated as simple because the sampling of members of the population is done randomly without paying attention to the existing strata in the population. Simple random sampling is a technique for obtaining samples that are directly carried out in the sampling unit. Then each sampling unit as an element of a remote population has the same opportunity to become a sample or to represent its population. This method is done when the members of the population are considered homogeneous. So B is proportionate stratified random sampling. Proportionate stratified random sampling is commonly used in populations that have layered arrangement. This technique is used when the population has members or elements that are not homogeneous and stratified in proportion. The disadvantage of this method is that if there is no investigation on the subject list, then it cannot create strata. C. Disproportionate stratified random sampling. Disproportionate stratified random sampling is used to determine the number of samples if the population is stratified but less proportional. The last is cluster sampling or area sampling. Cluster sampling or area sampling is also cluster random sampling. This sampling technique is used when the population doesn't consist of individuals but consists of groups or of individuals or clusters. Area sampling technique is used to determine the sample if the object to be studied or the data source is very broad. The weakness of the sampling technique can be seen from the sampling error rate if it's more compared to sampling based on strata, because it's very difficult to obtain clusters that are exactly the same level of heterogeneity with other clusters in the population. Okay, next is what is non-probability samples? Non-probability samples is a sample that has been drawn in a way that doesn't give every member of the population a known chance to being selected. So here A, the systematic sampling. The systematic sampling is a sampling technique based on the sequence of members of the population who have been given serial numbers. B is quota sampling. Quota sampling is a technique for determining a sample of a population that has certain characteristics to the desired quota. This technique, the population number is not taken into account but is classified into several groups. Samples were taken by giving a certain quorum to the group. Data collection was carried out directly on the sampling unit. After the quota was met, data collection was stopped. This technique is usually used and designed for research where a small sample is required, where each case is studied in depth, and the danger if the sample is too small, it will not be able to represent population. C is accidental sampling or accidental sampling. Accidental sampling is a sampling technique based on chance, where anyone who happens to meet a researcher can be used as a sample. If it is deemed that the person who happened to be met is suitable as a source of data. In an accidental sampling technique, sampling is not determined in advance. The researchers immediately collect data from the sampling unit and counter. D is purposive sampling. Purposive sampling is a sampling technique with certain considerations. The selection of a group of subjects in purposive sampling is based on certain characteristics which are considered to have a close relationship with the characteristics of the population that have been previously known. So, in other words, the sample unit contact is adjusted according to certain criteria applied based on research objective or research problems. E. Saturated sampling. Saturated sampling is a sampling technique when all members of the population are used as samples. This is often done when the population is relatively small, less than 30 people. Saturated sample is also called a census, where all members of the population are sampled. Okay, the last is snowball sampling. Snowball sampling is a sampling technique that is initially small in number. Then the sample is asked to select its friends to be the sample, and so on, so that the number of samples is getting bigger and bigger. It's like snowball rolling, getting bigger and bigger. In qualitative research, many use purposive and snowball samples. Okay, I think that's all from my presentation. Thank you for watching and see you on the next video. Bye.